This video is a re-recording of one that I did back in 2019 for a local user group called NE Bytes. The original was an in-person one that didn't get recorded, so I'm now re-recording it again for the LiDNUG YouTube channel in 2022. Right. Tonight we're going to have quite an informal chat about the .NET platform, where it's going, what its goals are, and why there appears to be so many different parts to it. I'm not going to do any tech demos or any deep dives, and yes, this may be death by PowerPoint only, but I'm going to try and keep it to about 60 minutes or so. Most of you already know me. I'm a Northeast UK guy and proud of it. I've been doing this stuff since the late 1970s and it's been the cause of my path to wreck and ruin so far. I've pretty much been involved with .NET and C# since its inception, around about 2000, and I've worked quite a lot with what rightly could be classed as C#'s predecessor before that, Delphi. Yeah, I'm deaf. You don't need to know that because you're not an in-person audience. Right, well, here we go then. If you're old enough, you'll understand that tagline and how it relates to the title. If you're not old enough, ask somebody who is, see if they enlighten you. For a long time now, Microsoft have made it clear that they're abandoning the traditional OS market and instead repositioning themselves as a cloud-based services platform. Right now, if you run a business of more than, I think it's about 1,000 employees, Windows 10 as an ISO image is no longer an option, and all the hardware that MS is officially sponsoring requires nothing more than a UEFI boot system and some sort of network connectivity, and the rest runs mostly out of Azure. Microsoft also want to be the dominant development platform for business services. The .NET toolset helps them achieve this by making it possible to use only one set of tools for every possible business. Problem scenarios that they may wish people to develop for. Add in NuGet and you now have a toolset that's flexible and works exactly the same way as Node.js does and has a package library that's just as easy to access as NPM is. This puts MS back in the driving seat for cross-platform development that directly competes with the JavaScript ecosystem. Sprinkle a little bit of TypeScript in here and there and everything just marries up quite nicely. Software as a service is now at the core of everything that Microsoft wants to do. Windows 10 is closely tied with the Azure platform. If any of you took advantage of the free Windows 10 upgrades from Windows 7, you'll know this because the license you got for your copy of Windows 10 is permanently tied to your Microsoft account. I know this from painful experience of spending 6 hours on the phone with MS Technical Support trying to figure out why I couldn't re-register my Windows 10 upgrade last time I had to reinstall my laptop. It turned out actually to be quite simple. While you were doing the install, your first login to your new install must be with your Windows account. Even if you're using a domain controller, local AD, or just local accounts in a workbook group-based network, it doesn't matter how many keys you try, if you don't log in the first time using your MS credentials, nothing will be matched. And this gets even worse with Windows 11 because Windows 11 will not even allow you to create AD accounts or local accounts or anything like that. They all have to be added using Azure AD, nevertheless. Office 365, as we know, is already the main MS Office offering. After Office 2019, there will be no more physical install mediums for Office and no more installing it on a local machine. Instead, there's just small bootstraps which act to create shortcuts on your desktop. No binaries are installed, and instead everything runs in a web framework straight out of Azure. Visual Studio Online is just the start for the VS product line. How many of you asked for an ISO one? You got VS 2017. Well, how many of you actually got one when you asked for one? Well, it is actually possible. 2017 and 2019 can have local install medium by using the correct command line switches with the web installer that you download. But be aware, for 2019, it's over 36 gigabytes worth of files. 2020, I haven't tried yet because last year I switched over to the JetBrains toolset after losing too much sleep wrestling with 2020's stupidities. Tools like the Roslyn language system are designed to work better from a remote connection. Pass in some code, have that code compile, then be deployed to Azure. End of story. Job done. For all of this SaaS stuff to work properly, .NET has to be able to run on more than just Windows. If it's to have a future, MS want to break free from Windows, particularly where their general consumers are. They want consumers using their platform services rather than being Windows users. As far as Windows as an OS goes, MS sees that it's mostly going to persist being a business-orientated platform as opposed to being a consumer platform. In the future, the myriad of devices that run out in the wild that consumers use will still need services that enable them to do the clever things that general users have gotten used to happening. This is why we're also seeing a large amount of effort being put into things like MS Cognitive Services, ML.NET, Cortana, and other enterprise-wide services running out of Azure. And the tooling itself is also intentionally simple for a reason. And that reason is the reason why most of this is open source too, the community. Instead of spending thousands of dollars on building complex UIs and other tools that run on different platforms, they're making it easy for the MS development community to build things themselves. Look at MS Code for an example. MS built a very basic text editor, and now, a few years down the line, a lot of what Visual Studio can do can actually be replicated and even cross-platform inside MS Code. So, this brings us to .NET and its importance in all of this. The full classic .NET platform that we all know will not have any new features or APIs added to it after version 4.8. MS will still continue to support it simply because of the sheer amount of software that's still out there and that runs on the platform. .NET as a platform is stable, mature, and has proven that it can stand the test of time. But with its roots firmly embedded in Windows as an OS, it's simply not suited for use in Microsoft's brave single cross-platform vision of the future. Security fixes will continue to be applied to it, and at least for now there is a guarantee that support for the platform will continue to be provided, but new applications should be built using .NET Core and subsequent versions that come after it. Everything that can currently be done in the full .NET platform already is, or very soon will be available in Core and its followings. Core is the version of the .NET full platform that fits in with Microsoft's cross-platform single tool vision of the future. It's pretty much that simple. It's much more than that though. It's flexible, it incorporates its own development model, and everything you do from here on in with .NET Core will use that same development model. I'm referring to the hosting model and things like Startup.cs and Program.cs. Things for building and configuring the host. If you look at Blazor running in the browser, the boilerplate code as a self-hosted runtime with a Startup.cs class is the same as that used with the Windows Forms self-host. The startup class, WPF, Web API, MVC, all of them have standardized on this similar model. And Microsoft have continued to improve that in the years since I originally wrote this video. Xamarin still uses Mono, but with Blazor being able to run locally directly in a browser frame and using Mono behind the scenes in WebAssembly, it's looking very likely that Xamarin will start to fade out. 4 years after recording this, we know this because we now have Project Maui and things like that. Core enables very flexible development and rapid cross-platform application building in an automated and modular fashion, should you need it. Core is a platform in its own right, and like all platforms for .NET from here on, it must follow the standard. And so that brings us to .NET Standard. The third platform? Well, actually no. Many people don't fully understand what it means to be .NET Standard. .NET Standard is not a platform. It's exactly what its name implies. It's a standard that defines what a given .NET platform must implement to be considered a .NET platform. See, what Microsoft have really been making is not a cross-platform development environment, but a cross-platform reference build to show other companies, providers and tech stacks how to implement something that can run any code designed for this system, no matter what that platform runs on. And .NET Standard is simply a set of minimum implementation specifications that tell you what version of the standard you should adhere to, so that you know exactly what APIs and functionality you will have available. For example, if you want to support building Windows Forms applications cross-platform, you need a minimum standard of version 2.1. If you look at the table that's showing at the moment, you'll see that right now that means that you need .NET Core 3, Mono 6.2, or one of the 3 different versions of Xamarin, depending on your target platform. This table also shows the current 5 .NET platforms available right now, and at what version level they support, and which versions of the standard they refer to. Now, as this is a re-record, this table is a little bit out of date. I can't remember the web link for the updated version, but it will still be out there somewhere. The principles are the same though. There will just be extra rows and extra columns, and these TBD to be done dates will be filled in on the more modern versions of the table. So, the standard only says what those APIs should be, however, not how they should be implemented. How they ultimately get implemented is entirely down to the implementer of the platform. You could, for example, implement only .NET Standard 1, which mostly only does console I/O and not much else. Then implement system.console so that it all entirely works over a serial cable link, and then call that .NET Serial. There are already remote parties looking at implementing various standards on things like Atmel and PIC microcontrollers, so that .NET can be used to run tiny embedded devices. In fact, if you look at the newest offering for Blazor, you'll see that it started life running on a micro.NET platform written in pure C called .NET Anywhere. And while its author no longer officially supports it, the code is open source and available on GitHub. Its source is compiled with very few modifications using the standard PIC microcompiler toolchain by Microchip Technologies, enabling you to run console-based .NET applications on their 16 and 32-bit microcontroller range. The standard is not governed or managed by Microsoft, however. It's governed by .NET Foundation, currently headed, I believe, still by John Galloway, but I'm not entirely sure on that. Again, as this is a re-record, this list of their current members who were at the top of the list may very much be out of date. But going on with the text I had in my original slides, the current board of directors for 2019 are shown in the slide on the screen. While a few of these folks actually work for Microsoft, they were voted for and chosen because of their standard in the because of their standing in the .NET community. Anyone who's watching this video, who's out there in the community, who works with .NET every day, can put their name forward to join the .NET Foundation of Directors. Whenever there is a vote, you can also join the foundation as a guiding member and help steer the standard for the future, ensuring that different platforms implement the functionality you need. The .NET Foundation has at its heart the global .NET community's interests, not those of Microsoft or indeed any company that wishes to build a .NET platform now or at any time in the future. Core, and subsequently SDK5 and SDK6, is the new .NET platform. The original .NET platform as we know it is going to go into its retirement phase to make way for a modular platform that follows these standards laid down by the foundation and its community. And that brings us to .NET V Next, or if you've been watching the build, .NET 5 as of the date when I originally recorded this. Now, we know now in 2022 that we've got SDK 6 and we have SDK 7 coming out soon, I would think, because we're nearly into September now. And then in another year or so's time, we'll see the next long-term supported version, which will be an even number SDK 8. However, after .NET Core 3 has been released, there will be no further naming using the Core branding. This doesn't mean that .NET 5 is ditching Core, however, far from it. .NET Core 4 will basically be .NET 5 and vice versa. Basically, Microsoft are realigning the naming for .NET. They're dropping Core, they're going back into .NET. And as we now know in 2022, the naming has been solidified to be .NET for the original Core platform, and I think, is it .NET Legacy or .NET or the .NET platform or something like that for the old one, whereas the new one is just .NET. I really haven't kept up with a lot of that for quite some time, so if I've made any mistakes there, you'll have to forgive me. Basically though, .NET 5 and vice versa will implement everything that the previous standard defines, plus whatever it needs to define the current standard. So if you have something that runs on .NET Standard 2 under Core 3.1, and you are upgrading to .NET 6, then .NET 6 will implement .NET Standard 2, and it will also implement Standard 2.1, 2.2, and any other relevant standards that it has to. So the fact that these things support .NET standards make them inherently backwardly compatible. At least that's the idea anyway. The CLI tools that you've become used to on .NET Core will continue to work the same way. So Core going into its new SDK and standard .NET phase will still use the same tool names. There won't be any strange changes as there was between .NET Core 2 and .NET Core 3, I think it was. Oh, okay, hang on. What happened there? Yep. Sorry, I caught the wrong key. Damn you, PowerPoint. Where was I? Right, 22. Yeah. So, .NET has an interesting future ahead of it. One that covers everything that Microsoft want to do as a platform company, but like any platform, it starts with the developers. It wants the developers to provide long-term support for their own code. It wants developers to be able to build single packages that can be used across a wide diversity of platforms and runtimes. It wants other people and other companies to build their own .NET based runtimes. It wants language providers to provide compiler editions that allow their languages to be compiled into .NET IL code and take part in the rest of the IL system. And it wants to be able to deliver all this easy, simply, and with a minimum of fuss. Again, this chart is a little bit out of date because I'm doing this as a recode, but it's still pretty clear exactly where they're going, or where they were going with this even just a few years ago. And that continues in 2020. Anyway, that's the end of this. I'm not entirely sure how long I've been at this. Blimey, 15 minutes to go through all that. I must have been talking fast. Anyway, you want to grab me? There you go. You can find anything about me and stalk me at any of the stuff on that final slide. Again, I apologise for any out-of-date stuff in there because it was an old video. I've simply re-recorded this and put it up because there were some questions in the LiDNUG group that related to how .NET Standard works, and it's not the first time that I've seen this question. .NET Standard and how the standards actually relate to the .NET frameworks themselves is a question that does keep coming up time and time again. And it was one of the reasons that prompted me to do this video in the first place as well. Anyway, that's all for now. I will see you again, hopefully, in the not too distant future.